Hello and welcome to episode 108 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream or in the audio form of the podcast or on YouTube, whatever you are doing. You've made the right choice. Unless you're neglecting basic, necessities in your life in order to take in this content. So if you are, not showering, for example, because you just need to listen to the good, stop. Okay, go get like a waterproof, like a Bluetooth speaker, throw that in the bath, and then clean yourself. For the love of God, please don't ignore, basic needs in order to consume this podcast, because I don't think it's worth it. I certainly wouldn't lose sleep over this podcast. I wouldn't be desperately staying up late putting together the news articles for this podcast because I decided to live life instead of just hovering around the news article like a vulture throughout the rest of the week. Where am I going with this? I'm talking about Gamescom. I'm more specifically talking about Gamescom Opening Night Live. That happened on Tuesday. We're going to cover as much of Gamescom Opening Night Live as we can. There is some other news this week. I really wanted to find a balance between kind of letting you know, hey, what's going on at Gamescom, what's there to see, what's to check out, right? Because the show was 2 hours long. I watched it. I wasn't able to watch it live because, again, life. But if you don't want to watch 2 hours of it and you just want to go find the trailers, or whatever, there are plenty of articles out there showcasing, what was shown. I'm using Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles to have a list of everything that was shown. But also you can just find the, trailers. And honestly, if you go to like a Video Games Chronicles and just look for it, I'm pretty sure all the trailers are in the article as well. We're not going to cover the trailers because we are a audio primary podcast. But I want to find a balance between that stuff and also having a conversation about the larger industry. For example, there are a lot of games that are leaving PlayStation Plus. I wanted to kind of cover that, as well as some news around an Xbox adaptive joystick that they have announced, some Final Fantasy 16 news, Silent Hill 2 kind of preview impressions, a whole whack load of stuff, plus the games that I've been playing, primarily been playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because after talking a bunch of shit about the Borderlands series, I just went crawling right back to it. We'll talk Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, what I've been playing in that game. I also played through the Final Fantasy 16 demo on PC. It is not a perfect demo. There are some weird tech issues that at least I personally experienced during that demo. We'll cover that as well. Without further ado, let's get into Gamescom Opening Night Live. That happened on Tuesday. I want to say like 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now they call it Gamescom Opening Night Live because it's the first big, Gamescom is a multi-day thing. So if you're paying close attention, you may find that there are plenty of Gamescom news, events, and announcements happening after Opening Night Live. But if you, for lack of a better word, to use a, like Olympics analogy, this is the opening ceremony of Gamescom, referred to as Gamescom Opening Night Live. This is put together and hosted by everyone's favorite Canadian, Jeff Keighley. They had a pre-show to kick things off. 2 games featured on the pre-show. I should probably go back and actually look a little more closely at these games. But Raccoon Logic has officially announced Revenge of the Savage Planet. That is the sequel to the 2020 first-person adventure action-adventure game Journey to the Savage Planet. It'll feature single-player, online co-op, cross-play, and even split-screen modes. If you are inviting a friend over to your house to play it, you can sit down and play Revenge of the Savage Planet together. Supermassive Games got a lot of irons in the fire, and they have officially revealed their new horror game This is going to be part of the next season, I guess, of collection of Dark Picture games. So if you know Dark Picture, the horror anthology series, I think there were about 5 games. In 4 or 5? I should know. I think it's one of the 2 numbers. I actually played, I like Supermassive games. I liked Until Dawn. And I've played exactly 0 of these games. So I'm like really late to the party with those games, but I'm familiar with them. Point is, they announced their new game, the first game in that series. And if you can't get enough sci-fi horror, I have good news for you. Directive 8020, the new sci-fi horror game coming in 2025. You will not have to wait to 8020 to play it, because Directive 8020 is coming in 2025, coming out on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. That was the pre-show. They kicked things off announcing Borderlands 4, which is just such unfortunate timing. You know, oh, excuse me, I'm like choking up just thinking about the Borderlands franchise. But you think about how unfortunate the timing is around, oh, we were going to put out this movie and it was probably going to be successful, and then we were going to announce the next big bad main entry in the Borderlands series, and that didn't really work out, did it? I mean, you could argue that the Borderlands game series was always going to be bigger than the movie for whatever reason. But here we are. Borderlands 4, 2025. There is not a lot of new information to go off of. Here's a blurb that was part of the trailer. In this next installment of the definitive looter shooter, players will resume the role of a legendary vault hunter as they blast their way through hordes of enemies in search of new treasures to loot on an all-new planet. So one of the things about Borderlands, at least Borderlands 3, 2, I forget, is you were actually hopping from planet to planet to planet to planet. The problem is that every time you visited a planet, it was a very small selection of that planet for you to explore. So I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to like assume anything one way or the other. But if their idea is that it is one new planet for you to visit, I'm going to assume that Borderlands 4 is going to be a much larger open world game in order to take the best advantage of a single planet for you to explore. Gone, perhaps, are the days of the planet hopping, you know, sort of Destiny 2 style, planet to planet to planet to planet, smaller sections of those planets every time you visit them, in something like Borderlands 3. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, just not to get too ahead of myself here, but Tiny Tina's Wonderlands actually takes on this kind of idea of the classic RPG formula. So what it does is it is one world, for lack of a better word, but when you are going between the main areas of this world that you inhabit, there's like an overworld. So it's like this miniature diorama scale style world that you are running from in order to get this idea that like, oh, I crossed this desert to get to the next major open world environment for me to run around and explore in. And I think that's fun. I think that works really well. I don't know if that's something that they're going to incorporate into Borderlands 4. I gotta say, from a gameplay perspective, I really like Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I think like Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, especially as somebody who's played, not completed, but played pretty much every mainline Borderlands game, excuse me. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands brings a lot of great ideas to the table. And I hope a lot of those are built upon and added to and are included in Borderlands 4. Because it was a scenario where like with Borderlands 3, it was like, man, they really didn't do a lot of different things in Borderlands 2. And in fact, I would argue they made some character changes worse in Borderlands 2. Then they go on to make Borderlands 3, which really doesn't feel like that big of a sequel to Borderlands 2. So it wasn't really until Tiny Tina's Wonderlands for like where I felt like from a gameplay perspective, Borderlands had made a significant jump in gameplay. There are still, you know, things they need to iron out and work out and all that stuff, but Tiny Tina's Wonderlands felt like from a gameplay perspective, the biggest change in that formula and the biggest improvements in that formula in quite some time. My hope is that Borderlands 4 takes that and runs with it to the best of its ability. And you know, like I've said this before many times, I don't think the writing in Borderlands is very good. I don't think it's very funny. In fact, I would argue it's anti-funny. I don't care for a lot of the characters, and I've grown disinterested in the overall story and lore and mythology of the Borderlands series. I get it. You are a vault hunter. A vault hunter is looking for treasure, and every time you start a new game, you are basically going through a story that often involves bad guys, you know, in an Uncharted-esque style story, being one step ahead of you, cat and mouse, back and forth as you race towards this ultimate treasure. And while you're doing that, you're shooting guns to get better guns and doing all that RPG leveling up stuff. So when I say I'm excited about Borderlands 4, that's a loose use of the word excited, but there are mechanics and gameplay stuff in Borderlands 4 that could be really, really cool. And realistically, it's not going to be that long of a wait. So I really got to finish Tiny Tina's Wonderland soon, because Borderlands 4 out 2025. So Activision was second up on the Gamescom Opening Night Live, and they brought out the folks over at Raven Software. So one of the things to note about Call of Duty and its development, especially with something like Black Ops 6, is there are a lot of people working on Black Ops. In fact, Black Ops 6 is being developed by two studios, Treyarch and Raven Software. My understanding is that Raven Software are the people that are working on the story mode in Black Ops 6, and I think some of the zombies and the multiplayer is being done by done by Treyarch. So it's this interesting scenario where you have two developers working on the game. Point is, I'm not here to like tell you like who takes credit for what or anything like that. But when they brought out the people on stage to show off the first bit of campaign footage for Black Ops 6, they brought out Raven Software, not Treyarch. The Black Ops 6 campaign story mode footage that they showed really a real emphasis on espionage spy shit. At the end of the day, we all know that, you know, if you don't start off a Call of Duty level with guns blazing, you're probably going to end with it guns blazing, and they do not skimp on the action towards the end of the campaign footage that they showed for the game. But real espionage type stuff, there's a part in the game that they showed off where you're doing a lot of stealth and you are using a camera to collect evidence in the environment. And one of the things you use the camera for is to take pictures of people. And it looks like a film camera. It looks like, you know, an older style film camera. It does take place in the 90s. I was born in 94, so I don't know to some extent what the camera capabilities were. But as I'm watching this trailer, they immediately get into some like ridiculous James Bond type espionage gadgetry, because they take a picture of somebody using the camera. They then place the viewfinder of the camera up to an optical like iris scanner, and they use the camera to trick the scanner into opening the door so that they can continue on with the level. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not how cameras work. That's not how cameras could ever work, because there's not even a screen on this camera. But I'm not here to pick on the technology of Black Ops 6, because if we start doing that, we'll be here all day. The point is that as soon as I saw that they were using like ridiculous camera technology in the game to scan people's eyes and then trick the door into opening, I was like, oh, we're back on our Black Ops shit. Like we're all in on the ridiculousness of like, you know, stealth and espionage and spy shit. But then as they're kind of going through the level, I believe also in that trailer footage they showed off, I think they saw Bill Clinton I'm pretty sure Bill Clinton was in it. I need to load up this this footage again. I'm looking at the footage right now. You should really check out the footage if you haven't already. But oh yeah, there he is. There's Big Bill himself, Bill Clinton, in all of his PS5 glory. In this trailer, he's not the main target in the most wanted campaign story level that they showed off, but if you ever want to know what Bill Clinton looked like on a PS5, brother, let me tell you, that's Big Bill, all right. Point is, you know, as you're going through the level and you're sneaking, there is a whole lot of gunfire. You know, you go loud at some point. And then you are, I should mention that in the context, this level takes place in like what feels like a political like campaign, you know, sort of rally, like a convention of some kind. Maybe not quite full on convention because it's more like a gallery that you're in. But anyways, after the guns go loud and everything, you are riding off in these motorcycles. And they just happen to have like some like motocross style, you know, motorcycles in this, you know, political gallery event that they're happening. And then you're riding off shooting guns on this motorcycle, shit's blowing up, and you have a guy that's driving for you. You break a guy out of like custody who's being held like underneath. It's go watch it. It's like 7 minutes long. It's ridiculous, and it got me incredibly excited about Black Ops 6. And hey, some spoilers, surprise, surprise. I continue to be excited about Black Ops 6, but that campaign footage was some of the most substantial footage that they've shown about the story mode so far, and I cannot wait to play more. The next game up, we gotta get through this because we'll be here all day. The next game shown up was a new Dying Light game. It is a standalone game, and they've kind of set some expectations around it that I think are interesting, even though I really do not trust the Dying Light franchise after Dying Light 2. So let's kind of explain what it is. Dying Light the Beast was announced, and it will feature 20 plus hours of content, and it will feature Kyle Crane, the protagonist from the original Dying Light game. Now, if you ask me, the Dying Light franchise really died with 2. I did not like my time with 2. And I think the idea of going back to Kyle and his story, I don't even remember what the guy's name was in Dying Light 2, so don't yell at me, but the idea of going back to Kyle and his story doesn't necessarily like feel like, I feel like that story was kind of over. You do make some, I won't spoil anything, but in the Dying Light The Following expansion, which takes place after the original Dying Light story. So if you have Dying Light, you probably have Dying Light, and then you have The Following the expansion. The Following the expansion takes place after the first game. It follows the story of the first game, and there are some choices that you can make in that story. It seems like they've kind of picked one of those choices as the canonical choice to follow up with this new game, The Beast. But 20 hours of content is a much smaller, you know, kind of scale and scope of something like Dying Light, right? Like they talked about Dying Light 2, like, oh, you can play Dying Light 2 till the fucking cows come home and all that stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily the case with Dying Light the Beast. But it's still interesting to see Techland try to take a swing at it. I would argue that Techland should focus on trying to make Dying Light 2 a good game. But honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything they could do from an update perspective that would necessarily change how I feel about Dying Light 2. But anyways, they showed off a new game. If you wanted to follow up to the first game and wanted to pretend maybe that second game never happened for any reason, they are working on it. Dying Light the Beast, a new standalone game announced by Techland at Gamescom Opening Night Live. Amazon is out there making games. They announced a new online co-op spectacle called King of Meat. It is a game in which you are hacking and slashing online with your friends, up to 4 players, stepping into the role of fearless contenders battling through ridiculous dungeons. There's also some previews of that game. Some people got a chance to play the game as well. The original, the reason I say that the good folks over at Supermassive Games are cooking is because they're working on Directive 8020. They're also working on Little Nightmares 3. They're also working on the Casting of Frank Stone game. Now, the original Little Nightmares developer is a studio called Tarsier Studio, and they are working on a new game called Reanimal, very much in line with that sort of 2D horror that you've seen from the original Little Nightmare games. This game looked pretty gnarly. It looked pretty gross. I also think Reanimal is a really creepy name for the game, but the blurb that they kind of have for the trailer is, the creators of Little Nightmare return to take you on a darker, more terrifying journey than ever before. In this horror adventure, a brother and sister go through hell to rescue their missing friends and escape the island that they used to call home. Genshin Impact, the Hoyoverse, was out in full effect at Gamescom Opening Night Live. I'm assuming that, and I hate to like discredit Jeff Keighley, but like, at the end of the day, when you watch something like this, you are watching they may call it a press conference, a showcase, an event, but at the end of the day, you are sitting down to watch commercials. And that's not like, I'm not here to like say that's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, these are commercials. And the only reason I start to think about this is because the Hoyoverse games were in such full effect that I wonder if Jeff Keighley needed to like remodel his bathroom. So it's like, sure, we'll have Genshin Impact show up and talk about coming to Xbox and all this stuff. But Genshin Impact officially coming to Xbox November 20th. It's a free-to-play action game. I actually think when it comes to the Hoyoverse games, I think Genshin Impact is actually kind of neat. But Genshin Impact is already out on PlayStation and PC and mobile. They showed off some more some more Monster Hunter Wilds gameplay. They also gave a big first look at Civilization 7 that will be coming February 11th to everything. That's my understanding, is like, Civilization primarily been a more PC focused game, but that's coming everywhere February 11th, 2025. Standard and deluxe editions included. Though if you get the deluxe edition, you get to play the game 5 days early. They have confirmed that Marvel Rivals will be launching in December and that all heroes will be free. If you don't remember, Marvel Rivals is the class-based, character-based, free-to-play third-person shooter, a 6 versus 6 team-based shooter with a third-person camera perspective, very much leaning into that Overwatch style of gameplay. And they have announced that will be free December 6th and that all of the heroes will be free as well. Monument Valley 3, the third Monument Valley, is officially coming to Netflix this year. That is going to be December 10th. If you are a Netflix subscriber, there are games coming to Netflix. Starfield was there, and I am of two minds of the Starfield. As someone who's played a lot of Starfield, as someone who felt like at one point he needed to defend Starfield until he realized that he maybe didn't care that much about Starfield in the end to feel like defending it anyways, I am of two minds of Starfield's showcase. On one hand, they announced that the Shattered Space DLC expansion will be coming out September 30th of this year. And it is going for a space horror sort of thing. That was one of the parts of the announcement, is Shattered Space is the next paid expansion, or the first paid expansion, excuse me. It's coming out September 30th. I bought the premium fancy edition of that game. I'm going to get that as part of it. Okay, cool. That's the part I'm excited about, is like a more focused story content for that game. However, they also revealed that the land vehicle, the Rev 8, is available now. So in Starfield, when you land on a planet, you can now drive around in a land vehicle if you want. And that's where I think my problem lies. It's not the existence of the land vehicle. I think the land vehicle is an important thing to have. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, there's this part of me that feels like the worlds of Starfield are often so barren and so randomized and just so cobbled together. When I mean worlds, I mean like when you pick a planet and you just pick a random part of the planet and you land on it. I'm not talking about when you go to like these clearly pre-built, manufactured levels and worlds and towns. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like the random shit that you find in these open worlds. I don't think are very exciting and worth exploring. So I think I maybe would have spent more time exploring them if the vehicle had been available day one. But I'm really starting to feel like Starfield and all the updates that it had leads me to believe that that game should have launched this year instead of last year, because that vehicle would have helped at least get people to be a little bit more okay with how empty some of those planets feel compared to spending, half an hour running around an open world being like, man, I found a cave, I found a base, I found not a whole lot, and it's not that exciting. But I'm going to give Starfield another chance. I will definitely be there to play Shattered Space when that expansion comes out. Maybe there'll be another update closer to September 30th, which will add more stuff. I don't know. But I don't think I'm going to touch Starfield again until that Shattered Space DLC comes out, because every time I've gone back to it, it's been like, yeah, this should have been here at the start, and I don't know how much more of this I want to play. Even though, again, that story very much wants you to replay it as many times as you can. Dune Awakening is coming to PC early access in 2025. Consoles will be getting a later date. They showed off a lot of Dune Awakening. My understanding is that Dune Awakening is a separate timeline from all the Dune stuff. So I'm not a Dune expert, but it seems like it's a separate timeline from the books and the movies and all that stuff. In the game they showed off, it's very much a action survival online game. You are fighting in the desert. You are building structures. You are, choosing to work with people online if you want. You're making a character and all of this stuff. And it seems neat, and it seems to tie into the Dune world pretty well without necessarily needing to, step in and around the storyline and the plot points of the original series. But it's coming, and it's coming soon on PC early access 2025, consoles a later date. They showed off more Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 gameplay. That game was delayed to February 11th, which means that some people are going to have to make the very difficult choice of choosing which historical simulation sort of game they want to play between Civilization 7 and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Though Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a, first-person action RPG with, deep historical context and story, but, Amazon showed off a new show. It is from the people that made Love, Death, and Robots. They're also the people that made the Deadpool 2016 movie, Terminator Dark Fate in 2019, Tim Miller and some other folks. And I gotta say, when they started talking about it, I was like, fuck off. This sounds like trash. That's what I honestly thought. Because what they showed off from Amazon Prime Video is a show called Secret Level. It is an adult animated anthology series featuring original stories set within the worlds of various video game series. The games, there's going to be 15 episodes at the start, covering such games as Armored Core, Conquered, Crossfire, Dungeons and Dragons, Exodus, Honor of Kings, Mega Man, New World, Pac-Man, and various PlayStation Studio games, as well as Sifu, Spelunky, The Outer Worlds, Unreal Tournament, and Warhammer 40,000. 40K if you are cool. And at first I was like, I don't want anything like this. But then they started talking about how like they were really inspired by the way people get excited with the trailers. So you think about the Diablo trailers and stuff like that, and you're like, oh man, this looks so neat and looks so cool. I really want to see the story of Diablo. Like, how did this, in the Vessel of Hatred, like how did that lady's arm split open in like 3 different ways and all this stuff? And then I started to like show a little bit more about what they were kind of going for. And I think I would have a lot more patience for it because it's an anthology series. I don't know how long the episodes are going to be, 30 minutes, an hour. I'll tell you right now, with the current state of TV production, 15 episodes seems like double what most shows are in terms of length these days. You know, as I complain about how short the Batman, the Caped Crusader show is, like 10 episodes, give me a fucking break. But anyways, it actually looks pretty good. I got to admit, I'm actually pretty surprised at what that secret level show has to offer. I think an anthology series about games is a really neat idea. You know, after they showed it off, color me intrigued. That's coming out December 10th. I think the pilot features God of War. I don't know if the first episode's God of War. We'll find out. That's what we'll do. Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux came out. If you don't know Peter Molyneux is a legendary and controversial game designer. He has worked on such games as Fable. He used to work at Media Molecule. He's worked on Black and White and a bunch of other games. And the reason why Peter Molyneux is, for context, the reason why Peter Molyneux is a controversial figure is because he was somebody who often sold you games in a way that didn't quite represent what the final product was. He definitely overpromised and underdelivered, and he did so for a good chunk of his career up until he kind of went away for a period of time. I think his most recent game, like Goddess, a great example of a game that came out in early access unfinished, and then they literally never went and finished the game, and then the game just kind of died after talking up how awesome and stuff that game was going to be. So to me, he seemed like a little bit of a snake oil salesman. That's no offense to Fable and some of the games that he did make. But at some point, either he believed his own hype, he started to smell his own shit, but he really was over-promising, under-delivering on a lot of stuff. The point is, he came out and he announced a new game called Masters of Albion. It has been described as an open-world god game. He also said that he brought in ex-Fable developers, ex-Media Molecule developers, including boss Mark Healy. And according to Peter Molyneux, this game is entirely self-funded. No release date was given, but it looks like it is taking a lot of elements and inspiration from his past work to make something that he describes, quote, an open world god game. Path of Exile 2 early access release date has been revealed. That is November 15th. The game will be playable in early access on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC via Steam and the Epic Game Show. The Epic Game Store, excuse me. The last thing that they showed was Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. They didn't actually show off a lot. What they really wanted to do was put a release date out, and they did so. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle now coming to Xbox and PC on December 9th. And then there's a pause. And then the screen changes and it says Spring 2025 for PlayStation 5. So, if you are a PlayStation owner, you will not need to buy an Xbox or PC. I'm sure Xbox would love if you did so, but you will not need to because it is coming to all of the consoles minus Nintendo when it comes out, half a year later-ish, Spring 2025 for the Great Circle. They kind of put out a statement saying that we want everybody to be able to enjoy this adventure. That's why we're delighted to bring Indiana Jones and the Great Circle to PlayStation 5 players next spring 2025. People got mad. Because it's the internet and because people are like tribalistic dickheads. People got mad because you had people being like, well, what's the point of owning an Xbox? What's the point of owning an Xbox because they talk like this. What's the point of owning an Xbox if they're just going to come to PlayStation 5. I just don't think people really see the forest from the trees in a lot of scenarios. And I think people are short-sighted. I think people are actively ignorant. I think they're so reactionary. They're so undeservedly passionate about things that don't matter that they actually just can't realize what the bigger picture is. So let me explain. I hate doing this. I hate talking like this because at the end of the day, like I don't care. But when people are so ignorant, I just want to offer some amount of course correction. So let's use Indiana Jones as an example. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is coming to Xbox and PC December 9th. It's coming to PlayStation 5 in the spring. What's the point of owning an Xbox? Really, the whole point of owning an Xbox is the service that you can use to go with Xbox. And I'm talking about Game Pass. Yes, you will need Game Pass Ultimate in order to play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. But guess what? If you go buy one now and sign up for Game Pass, there's a whole lot of games that are going to come out between now and December 9th for you to play on an Xbox. And some of those games will be day one games. So if you like first-person shooters, you like shooting people from a first-person perspective, and you are excited about Indiana Jones, great news. Between now and December 9th, you can also play Call of Duty Black Ops 6 day one on Game Pass Ultimate if you own an Xbox or a PC. You won't need Game Pass Ultimate if you own a PC. So people ask, what's the point of owning an Xbox? The point of owning an Xbox is that if you ask them, it's the best place to play games day one through Game Pass Ultimate. And if you don't see that as a selling point, fine, but I don't know what else to tell you, right? Because the people that are excited about playing Indiana Jones on a PS5 are going to be paying full price for that game day one in spring 2025, and they will have to sit there and wait for everybody to finish talking about how that game may or may not be good. I don't know. We'll find out December 9th. But everyone's going to have to sit around and, all those other PlayStation users are going to sit around and wait until spring 2025. No, don't get me wrong. Some of those people probably have a lot of games on their plate, a lot of backlog games, a lot of games they're looking out for that aren't this and that and whatever. So getting to spring 2025 may not be so painful for a lot of people who are PlayStation users that are excited about this game. But I think even the most reasonable PlayStation owner can tell you that the best way to the best way to play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is to play it on Xbox. That's the whole point. I'm not telling you to go buy an Xbox, as I think that's not where my bread is buttered in terms of where my opinion strongly lies. I'm a PC gamer, right? I'm playing games on PC, right? So the only problem I have is sitting around being like, fuck, I wish I could play Final Fantasy 16 now instead of waiting a year, after it came to PS5 or whatever. But people are like, well, what's the point of owning an Xbox if it's just going to come to PlayStation? Because you could potentially save the whole price of that game, play it day one by owning an Xbox and just getting Game Pass for Indiana Jones: The Great Circle. Did I say that Indiana Jones was the last game? But wait, there's more. The final game shown at Gamescom Opening Night Live was a reveal, an announcement, and not much else. Let's set the scene. The beautiful valley, hills, greenery of Sicily in the 1900s. I'm talking about Mafia: The Old Country. Mafia: The Old Country is a prequel to the Mafia series. It has been announced for 2025 on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Takes place in Sicily, exploring the origins of the Sicilian mafia. It is being made by 2K's Hangar 13 studio. I know that studio has been through a lot. I don't even know if some of the original people who worked on like Mafia 3 and stuff are there. But they're going to the old country. They're going to try their best to offer an authentic Italian, Sicilian experience with Mafia the Old Country. That was the final game shown at Gamescom Opening Night Live for 2025 on all the consoles except Nintendo. And then Jeff Keighley at some point was like, hey man, I know you just saw Gamescom Opening Night Live and you probably still remember Summer Game Fest, but you can't get rid of me that easily. They confirmed that the 10th anniversary of the Game Awards is happening in December on December 12th. That is Thursday, December 12th. That's going to be taking place at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles, California, and will be streamed live on various platforms. Now, just to remind you, how the Game Awards have gone. The Game Awards debuted in 2014. This is after they left Spike TV. If you remember, Spike TV used to have, if you remember Spike TV, if you remember Spike TV, you probably have no hair like me. I'll just say that. You remember when, TNA was on Spike. Point is, that's when I first saw TNA was on Spike. I was like flipping through that and like 1,000 Ways to Die and Gary the Rat and Stripperella on Spike TV. Anyways, point is, the Game Awards originally debuted in 2014 with 1.9 million viewers. It has grown every year since then, and over the last few years, the event appears to have established itself as the most watched award show in the world. Last year, the Game Awards 2023 stream estimated to have 118 million live streams. Like that, to go from 1.9 million viewers to about 118 million live streams, that's big business. So if you ask me, and I think if you ask Jeff Keighley, he's not going to pick his favorite kid, but I think at the end of the day, the Game Awards is the biggest show that Keighley does, and it's coming back for its 10th anniversary, December 12th. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got some more news. Stick around. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt, and we continue to talk about video games. Buried in the news around Microsoft's PC and Xbox game, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle coming to PlayStation 5, there was also something a little weird about the announcement of the release of another Xbox game. That game is called Towerborn. That is the new game from the Banner Saga developer Stoic, which is coming out on Xbox and PC at the same time, and it is going to Game Pass day one. And if you don't know Towerborn, it's a pretty neat looking kind of side-scrolling action-adventure game. But there's something weird about the release. I just said it's coming to Xbox and PC at the same time and going straight to Game Pass day one. However, Towerborn is going to have a limited time exclusive run on Steam, according to the new trailer that they put out. You might be sitting there thinking, and I was thinking the same thing, wait a minute, what the fuck? Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me that this game that's coming to Game Pass day one is not actually going to be day one on Game Pass because the day one is going to be a limited time exclusive window on Steam for early access? What? Here's what's going on. Towerborn begins Steam early access on September 10th. In a post on Xbox Wire, Microsoft said that the Xbox game preview release will follow with a full, now free-to-play launch for 2025. Towerborn will also include cross progression, so if you buy it on Steam and play it during the early access period, then switch over to the Xbox and Game Pass version, you keep your stuff and all that stuff. Explaining the decision to go with an early access launch, game director Daniel McLaren pointed to the successful Kickstarter that got the Banner Saga off the ground. Quote, Stoic's history has always been about interacting with their players, and Kickstarter is the promise of something. For Stoic, That worked out very well. And now we're able to say, hey, you don't have to wait for us this time. We can give you a game right away. This is quite the spin that Microsoft has. I'll maybe explain what I think in a moment, but Xbox has a spin on it, saying that as a result of the Steam Early Access launch, Xbox, PC, and Game Pass players will immediately feel the benefit of the refinement Towerborn will undergo during the Early Access period and beyond. That's what they say anyways. It's fair to say the announcement of Towerborn Steam first launch and full launch of 2025 has sparked various discussions among Xbox fans. While some are saying they're fine with the release strategy, others are pointing to the fact that Xbox has for years marketed Towerborn as a Microsoft published Xbox game and is now set to launch on Steam first, disappointing yet again what's left of the company's core console audience. Can I tell you what I think? So let's go over this one more time. The game is launching day one on Game Pass on PS5. Day one on Game Pass on Xbox and PC. Before it launches day one on Game Pass, it's going to come to Steam Early Access on September 10th. It will then receive a Xbox Game Preview release, which if you don't know what Xbox Game Preview is, Xbox has a program in place for developers to put out unfinished games that are going to continue to receive updates and fixes. And it's basically their version of early access, right? So you can buy Towerborn Early Access on Steam on September 10th. You can wait for the Xbox Game Preview version, or you can wait for the game to come out in its full version in 2025. I think they should have known this. I bet if Xbox could do this all over again, a lot of things would be different, and they probably wouldn't advertise it as such. I think the problem that they've run into is they don't feel a need to delay the game, and as such have, by choosing not to delay the game. This is what I mean when I say delaying games is usually a good thing, because it can avoid fucked up scenarios like this where now people feel like they're second class citizens. Oy vey, talk about first world problems, but feel like second class citizens because this Xbox Game Pass game is not going to be the first place you can actually play the game. Big deal. But from a perspective, from a of a Xbox fan, the public perception, it feels like this launch is already messy and the game isn't out the door. If you ask me, I think the game should, at the bare minimum, the Xbox Game Preview version and the Steam Early Access version should come out at the same time. So people can say, hey, it is on Game Pass day one. It's the early access version. You can buy it on Steam, or you can get the Xbox Game Preview version on Xbox Game Preview version on Game Pass. I think that's probably the right way to do this, is to have early access launch on Steam and on Game Pass at the same time, instead of this like release window of like, okay, it's out September 10th. We can confirm that, but Game Preview is going to come a little bit after that, and then you'll get the full version in 2025. I think the bare minimum, it should feel like it even, and I, just to make the people happy, you got to give the people what they want. But what I'm saying is, put the early access out on Steam at the same time as you put out the early access version on Xbox Game Pass. That way it feels like it's consistent, even if it's, not quite, or whatever the case may be. Because if you look at it any other way, I think this is a really messy launch, and it's the first time that this has happened for an Xbox game. And I think some people are going to be pretty upset and not trust a Game Preview or Xbox when it comes to, making good on their Game Pass day one promises in a world where they've already hacked away at a lot of what it means to have a game day one on Game Pass in the first place. I'm surprised, but I'm happy. I'm surprised, but I'm happy, okay? Silent Hill 2 has been receiving a lot of preview coverage from various influencers and all sorts of people. You know, for example, Video Games Chronicles wrote a hands-on preview article about Silent Hill 2. So when I say people are happy, I can't tell you if everybody's happy, and I can't tell you how happy they are, but people are starting to feel pretty good about this Silent Hill 2 remake. It's winning over a lot of fans, and the response to it on YouTube has been pretty positive. The previous gameplay footage that they showed was dividing a lot of players, but the new footage has been overwhelmingly liked on places like YouTube. For example, this is Video Game Chronicles' opinion, and I'm just reading the headline. You can read the preview coverage if you want yourself. This is what Video Games Chronicles has to say about Silent Hill 2, based on the preview of what they've seen so far. Silent Hill, this is the headline. Silent Hill 2 feels like it's getting the Capcom-style remake treatment it deserves. Bloober Team's remake nails the atmosphere of the original game. That's what they say. This is what they say. I haven't played it. I don't know. So there is a good chance that Silent Hill 2 might actually the remake of Silent Hill 2 might just stick the landing. I know some people are maybe not crazy about such an old game getting a remake that has a full price and stuff like that on it. You know, it's an expensive price tag for an old game, even if it is being completely remade. The demo that a lot of people got to play was a 3-hour demo, and a lot of people seem pretty happy with it. You'd have to go into more details about it, but the tide might be turning on this Silent Hill 2, remake, and people might actually be pretty hopeful for what it has to offer. Speaking of impressions and demos, Final Fantasy 16 is coming out in September, and a demo's out now. Actually, I played that demo. So the game originally came out on PS5 in June of last year. It's coming out on PC September 17th. I think it's about $67 on PC from what I remember. I don't know what it is on PS5, so I'm just going to go to PlayStation Store. How much is the old Final Fantasy? Oh, that's funny. That's so weird. Why is it like that? That is truly bizarre. Anyways, well, for some reason, it's a lot cheaper on PC than it is on PlayStation. Maybe you can find, I'm guessing you can find like a disc version of Final Fantasy 16 that's a hell of a lot cheaper. If I go to Amazon right now, Final Fantasy 16. Well, shit, I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, on PC, Final Fantasy 16 is only about $67, which is reasonable as far as I'm concerned. This is a reasonable price to pay for that game as far as I'm concerned. I played the demo. We're going to talk more about the demo in a moment. But just a quick update, that is coming out. You can also get the complete edition of the game, which will include the story expansions, both Echoes of the Fallen and the Rising Tide. That's all coming out at the same time. Now, there's a little bit more Final Fantasy news to cover, actually. Square Enix has been talking about the idea that more and more Final Fantasy games could be coming day one on PC. That's kind of what they're saying. In fact, the director of Final Fantasy 16 says it's probably likely that future Final Fantasy games launch on PC on day one. And I think the reason for that is because you have such positive word of mouth when it comes to, a game, but then you can't play it, right? So everyone And this is kind of like what I was talking about with, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, right? It's this idea of like, oh, you hear this game's good, it's hype, people are playing it, but you literally cannot play it. You don't have the console for it. You don't have the system for it. And people miss out, and then people forget, right? Like, call me crazy, but if Indiana Jones and the Great Circle came out day one on PS5, it would probably sell more copies than if it came out in spring of 2025 on PS5. Call me crazy, but that's probably what would happen. And I think that's what Square Enix has started to realize when it comes to their Final Fantasy games, is they can't afford to have that game come out a year or 6 months later on a platform like PC, where people are pretty happy about what Final Fantasy is. Think about how successful the Final Fantasy 14 MMORPG is, right? Like, people are hot for Final Fantasy for the most part. Say what you will about Final Fantasy 16. I enjoyed the demo. I enjoyed what that game is setting out to be. But they can't afford to have these games come out and not sell a zillion copies, which is kind of the problem they ran into with the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth game. But that's my quick story of saying, hey, you might see more Final Fantasy games coming to PC day one. Xbox is making a new adaptive joystick. It will also include 3D printable files for the adaptive thumbstick that are now available for people. But basically, it is a new controller for people with accessibility needs, motor accessibility, and stuff like that, which is really neat. I'm trying to pull up the price for it. It is coming out in early 2025. It is going to be about $30 on the Microsoft Store. Really neat to see. Check that out. Microsoft kind of put out a statement saying like, that there are over 425 million players with disabilities worldwide, and they continue to want to meet those players where they're at by designing accessible controllers to make people's lives easier when it comes to playing games. 'Cause in some cases, it's just like, in accessibility can be a game by game scenario, but if it's like, oh, this controller fits my needs, sometimes there is a whole world of games that can be unlocked with such controllers. I know Sony also has some accessibility stuff. The Callisto Protocol developers over at Striking Distance have announced the new spin-off game called Redacted, and it is confirmed its launch plans. It's coming out October 31st. It is the new roguelike action game set in the same universe as the Callisto Protocol. You are going back to Black Iron Prison for some new action. They kind of have an announcement trailer. Very comic book-y style. It is not the same sort of game. It is not the same sort of style of, action game as something like the Callisto Protocol. It is very run-based. Think something like Hades, but with shooting. It's got an okay look to it. It looks all right. It's a reminder that I need to go back and play Callisto Protocol and finish it because I never got around to it. But hey, new game from the from that studio, Redacted, coming out October 31st. Now, this game caught me by surprise. I woke up this morning and I was drinking my coffee and I had to spit out the coffee because I was like, wait a minute, what the hell? So, if you are a movie buff, for lack of a better word, if you're someone who watch a lot of movies, you might be familiar with my good friend, Tim Burton. Tim Burton, in my opinion, has made some pretty good movies. Not all of them get good, but the ones that are good are great. One of my favorite Tim Burton movies is the 1996 classic Mars Attacks. I love Mars Attacks. I can't get enough of Mars Attacks. I think it's a brilliant movie. It holds up today. In fact, if anything, Mars Attacks is better now than it was when it came out in 1996 because it is aged like a fine wine. If you want to know one thing about me, it's that I love Mars Attacks. So imagine my surprise when I woke up this morning with hot news from Gamescom that they're making a Mars Attacks game. But it's not just any sort of game. It's called Mars Attracts. And what this is it is a new theme park simulator based on the 1960s card game that would then go on to inspire the Tim Burton film. That's right. You are making a theme park on Mars, complete with rides and abducted humans. Mars Attracts. That's such a great name for a Mars Attacks theme park simulator game. Maybe weird because you might be thinking, oh, I want to run around and shoot and be aliens, but like there's already Destroy All Humans. Like if you want an alien running around shooting game, like there's already the Destroy All Humans games. So I feel like this is a really interesting idea on Mars Attacks. That's coming out in 2025 on PC and will be in early access for about a year. So the full release of that game probably not out until 2026. But hey, someone's making a new Mars Attacks game. More power to them. This is the final news story. I'm getting this from GameSpot, and I'm not here to pick on the various, subscription services and things like that. But a bunch of games are leaving PlayStation Plus. There's quite a few. A couple of those games include Destroy All Humans and Destroy All Humans 2. NBA 2K24, Need for Speed Unbound, Spellforce, Trials of Mana, Lost Judgment, Moving Out 2, Midnight Fight Express, which is such a fucking awesome game. Love Midnight Fight Express so much. In Europe, Marvel's Midnight Suns, Alien Isolation, and Horizon Forbidden West are leaving PlayStation Plus. Now, in fairness, it seems like the games are being removed between various regions. So, for example, in Europe, it's a lot of the Star Ocean games. Like almost every Star Ocean game is also leaving PlayStation Plus, along with Spiritfarer. But when I see that PlayStation Europe is losing Horizon Forbidden West, to me, that sticks out like a sore thumb more than any other game across any of the regions, across any of the titles. Because what is PlayStation doing removing their own games from their own subscription service? What possible business deal could have gone bad, assuming something went bad, right? Like, I'll give you an example, being business deals. So PlayStation goes to EA and says, hey, EA, we want to have Need for Speed Unbound on our PlayStation Plus. We're going to, give you a couple bucks or whatever, and we're going to sign this deal, and it's going to be on for the next 12 months. 12 months, you can get Need for Speed Unbound on PlayStation Plus. I don't know, right? But something like that. That's kind of how the licensing goes for these games. But PlayStation Plus is owned by Sony. Horizon Forbidden West is owned by Sony. You can start to see when I start to ask the question, what the fuck is going on with PlayStation Plus? Because it is a real gut punch to the entire service to have one of your own first-party PlayStation-owned games leave the service. It's ridiculous. They offer little to no explanation as to why that is. But it's pretty fucking weird. Now I will say that, some of the games that are leaving PlayStation Plus also leave around the same time as some of the Game Pass games. So for example, GameSpot says it's currently unknown why these games are being removed, with the exception of NBA 2K24, which comes shortly before the launch of NBA 2K25. So, hey, they don't want you playing last year's game. They want you to play this year's game, so you'll no longer be able to play NBA 2K24 as part of the PlayStation Plus middle tier library. And I should mention all these games are part of the middle tier library. If you got them for free as part of the monthly games, then they're not going anywhere. But just to let you know, these are the library of games. So, hey, I get it. They don't want you to play NBA 2K24. They want you to buy 2K25. That game is also being removed from Game Pass on August 31st. So even Xbox is losing NBA 2K24. However, the rest of the games listed at the time of this writing will disappear very, very shortly. And in fact, they may already be gone. Unlike Microsoft, which constantly lets players know what games will leave Xbox Game Pass and when, PlayStation hasn't brought much attention to this. Which just begs the question, is this just Sony's arrogance and hubris when it comes to their own subscription service, that they are more than willing to pull the rug from under some of its users because it can't be bothered to effectively communicate when and where games are going? Like, I'm not even asking for them to do the bare minimum, which would be keeping a game like Horizon Forbidden West in every region that PlayStation Plus, the middle tier library, is available. I'm not even asking for that, though I should be. What I'm asking for is better communication. I have friends and family who check the PlayStation Plus store, the PlayStation app and the PlayStation store constantly. They're looking all the time. And one of the reasons they're looking all the time is because if they're not looking a couple of times a week, for what games are available, what's going on, there's every possibility that the next time they go and look, something is completely different than what they had experienced before, with no communication and no update. Now, I know that some of these friends and family also listen to the podcast, which thank you for doing so. But at the end of the day, I shouldn't be the one to communicate when and where PlayStation Plus games, or Game Pass games for that matter, are leaving the service. I shouldn't be the one to do that. So bare minimum, let these people get their information straight from the source, from the horse's mouth, I might say. God forbid have Horizon Forbidden West, a PlayStation-owned game, stay on PS Plus. But if you're going to remove that stuff, let people know about it ahead of time. Find an effective way, a notification, like a pop-up on the phone, something. Damn. It's ridiculous. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the games that I've been playing. This will be the last break of the show. Stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I am still GnittWitt, and I've been playing a couple of games here and there. So we kind of talked about it when talking about Borderlands 4, excuse me. But I've been playing a bit more of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and I've been quite enjoying my time with the game. I kind of bounced off it off and on here and there when I first started playing it, but I've stuck with it, and damn it if it isn't still an effective game. The hooks in me are quite deep. I'm about, I would say about 20 hours or so into the game. I'm a little more than halfway done from the looks of things, because I'm about level 25, 26 for your character level. My understanding is the maximum character level is 40, but you can level beyond that. You just get smaller, more incremental upgrades and stuff like that for the character. Now, there is also DLC expansions for the game. I do own all of the DLC expansions, and my understanding is that not only are the expansions a little on the short side, you're looking at probably about, what do we got here? We've got Shattering, Spectre Glass, Molten Mirrors, Glutton's Gamble, and Coiled Captors. My understanding is each of those expansions is only about an hour or two long, give or take. They might be longer. I just kind of briefly glanced at howlongtobeat.com to see what kind of the state of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was in terms of how long I could expect to play it. It is quite a bit shorter than something like Borderlands 3, which I think I'm actually okay with because honestly, I need to move on to other stuff. I mean, it's going to be about a week and a half before I get the chance to play, the new Star Wars Outlaws game. So I have time, but I don't have a ton of time. But I've been picking at Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I really enjoy the shooting in that game. I enjoy the action. I think the twist of going from a more sci-fi futuristic game to a more fantasy oriented game has opened up to a lot of cool ideas in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, such as the idea of more fantasy weapons, melee based weapons, and stuff like that. I also think after shooting a lot of Mad Max sci-fi futuristic inspired, characters and going through these environments, the idea of going to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and being like, oh, this is a pirate skeleton base and this is a dragon lair and all of this stuff, I think it just adds a little bit of a breath of fresh air to it. I'm still playing the game on mute. I have not paid attention to a single thing in the story. I do have the subtitles on because when you go up to a character in the game and it's not a traditional cutscene and the character is just talking at you, you won't know how long they've been talking for unless you have the subtitles on. So I have the subtitles on just so I can glance down at the screen and be like, okay, they're done talking. I can go move on to the next thing. Because when you pick up a side quest or complete a quest or talk to a character, there's no way to skip through the dialogue. You can skip the traditional cutscenes in the game, but you can't skip the dialogue. So it is a scenario where, and this is one of the things I really don't like about Borderlands, is if you don't like the writing and you don't like the humor, you do have to sit there to some, you can move around, you can run around. But the characters are going to talk at you until they are done getting all their dialogue out, and then you can move on. Even if you don't pay attention to the dialogue, your quest log and all that stuff will still update. It'll still give you a location, a waypoint on the map. So at no point was I like, fuck, I don't know what to do because I wasn't paying attention to this dumbass person talking to me for what feels like way too long about some awful thing. Like, it's not unreasonably long, but when you factor in that I don't like the writing, it feels like an eternity every time you have to talk to somebody. The point is that when you factor in the new RPG stuff, the different stats that you're leveling up, the points that you're putting in, the part where you can mix and match the player abilities, there is a lot of fun to be had in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands action, and I'm really, really happy with it for what it is. So for example, when you start out the game, you're making a whole character. You are even choosing what, kind of strengths and weaknesses that character has. So when I started the game, my character had strong critical chance. So when I shot an enemy, it had a higher chance for a critical hit. And my action skills also recharged faster. But the trade-off was that I had significantly less health. So I was kind of like a glass cannon, almost, of like, I can do a lot of damage pretty quickly and I can recharge my abilities, but I don't have a lot of health as a result. Now, over time, as you level up your character, you can reallocate your character points so that you can get more health than maximum health and stuff like that, or further increase your critical chance, or start to add to your critical damage so that when you critically hit, you do a hell of a lot more damage because not only is the chance higher, but so is the damage multiplier. Things like that. But when you start at the game, you are picking a character class. You cannot mix and match your character class. So once you pick a class, that is it. So I picked something called the Spore Warden. And what the Spore Warden does is that it has a little mushroom guy as a companion that you can have run around with you. And he's awesome because the mushroom guy, he just does his thing. He distracts enemies. He takes damage. He damages enemies. So I get a little more room to breathe when I'm fighting. But I eventually upgraded him so that when I die, I go into like a down but not out state, and he can actually come over and revive me, which is awesome. But I started playing more and more of the game, and I leveled up to the point where I actually got to unlock a second character class. Now, I could be wrong, but I think you have to hit the maximum level before you can mix and match your character classes again. But you only get 2 character classes. So the other one I picked was, I forget. I forget what the name of the character class that I picked for the second one was, but the thing that it gave me is it gave me an additional companion called a wyvern, and that wyvern flies around and attacks enemies. So I have the scenario where, and there's multiple classes to pick from. Not every class has a companion, but I picked the 2 companion ones because I'm playing the game by myself. So I'd like the idea of this mushroom guy running around who can heal me when I die and revive me when I die, plus a wyvern dragon thing that's flying around in the sky shooting enemies and stuff like that. And each of those classes have additional skills and unlocks and stuff like that, and it just adds a lot more of a dynamic sense of progression to the character class, something that kind of didn't exist in even Borderlands 3 to some extent. And I can't stress enough, if you've never played a Borderlands game, you could probably pick Wonderlands or 3 and you're not maybe going to notice the biggest differences between what came before. So you could start with one of the more recent ones and kind of be on your way. But as someone who played a lot of 3 and a lot of 2 and a lot of 1, Tiny Tina Wonderlands, from a gameplay and character progression standpoint, and even from a stylistic standpoint, feels like the biggest breath of fresh air that they've had so far, even if they are still using a pretty tried and true formula, and the writing is still not very good. This will probably be the last time I talk about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because it is also one of those games where it's like, since I have the character voice on mute anyways, I'm going to have like wrestling on in the background or YouTube or some other thing while I play through the game, because if I'm not going to pay attention to that, I might as well catch up on TV watching or YouTube or something like that. I also played through the Final Fantasy 16 demo on PC. This is the second time that I've played through the Final Fantasy 16 demo. I did have a chance to play it on PS5 when it originally came out. I thought it was awesome back then, and I think the demo is okay. I had some flickering issues during some of the cutscenes specifically, where the screen just was flickering every now and then. And it would seemingly trigger like, a couple of, seconds into a cutscene, which if you've played Final Fantasy, there are a lot of cutscenes. So it's really annoying to have this like, epic, cinematic moment. And then you go into the cutscene, and then like 7 seconds into the cutscene, it starts flickering and stuff. I was able to eventually adjust some of the graphic settings on my PC in the game to turn that flickering off, but it was still kind of disappointing to see. The other thing is that the frame rate in that game is not consistent across the cutscenes and across the gameplay. So the gameplay frame rate is unlocked. I was able to play it at like 100 frames a second, at times roughly in 1080p on my PC. But when you watch the cutscenes are locked to 30 frames per second. So it is the scenario where the gameplay looks a lot smoother than the cutscenes, which is unfortunate, but I guess the lower frame rate does give the cutscenes more of a traditional cinematic vibe, whereas the gameplay is much more smooth. But it would have been nice to have the cutscenes match the frame rate of the game, but what are you gonna do? But that game is out. Like I said, that game is out pretty soon, in less than a month. I'm looking forward to it. I do feel weird about this idea that some of my most anticipated games for this year have been games that came out in years past that are finally coming to PC, like in the case of the Horizon Forbidden West, like with the case in, Ghost of Tsushima, but I like what I like, and I am excited to play those games. But yeah, it's kind of interesting on PC. Final Fantasy 16 is $67 on Steam, or you can get the complete edition for $93.49, which includes all of the DLC, both the Rising Tide and the Echoes of the Fallen gameplay. But overall, I thought the gameplay was really cool. I think the story is a little ridiculous, but it's a Final Fantasy game. The story was always going to be ridiculous, and there may be, having played the demo again, I think the gameplay is actually pretty light. There's not a lot of fighting in that demo, all things considered. It is a lot of cutscenes, and then it's a lot of the cinematic moments with the icons, with the Phoenix at the start and then at the end and all this stuff. But whatever. It looked good, and it ran, the performance wise, it was good enough for me to be like, yeah, if this game is not a hot mess when it comes to PC, I will be there to play it. I've been really looking forward to Final Fantasy 16 since they showed it off. I knew I was going to have to wait a year-ish to play it on PC. I'm glad it's finally coming out. And more or less, I think the demo was good enough for what I'm looking for, but it is a scenario where I'd like to wait for reviews of that PC version, get some other impressions to be like, does it stick the landing from a technical standpoint? Are they going to put out any update that unlocks the frame rate in the cutscenes and stuff like that? Remains to be seen, but we'll find out when that game comes out. I still need to get back to South Park Stick of Truth. That is a pretty fun game, and I know it's also pretty short, all things considered, but I've just been, birthday parties with family and friends and other stuff like that. Life has gotten in the way. I'm going to be off. I usually work on the weekends, but I'm off Sunday to watch AEW All in London, but that's an early morning show, so maybe I'll have a chance to check out some more games after that pay-per-view. Looking forward to that pay-per-view. But overall, gaming is going okay. I thought the Gamescom show was okay. I think Jeff Keighley has really found a routine, has really found a formula with a lot of that stuff. I will say that having now watched as many of his showcases as I can, there are moments where the games, some of the presentations feel like more of a naked like they're all commercials. I'm not going to argue that they're not. They're all commercials. But there are times when like a free-to-play game shows up, or a Hoyo or the Hoyoverse game show up, or this mobile game shows up, or whatever. Like there are moments, and I'm not picking on any specific game, but there are moments where it feels like more of a naked commercial than something like the Mafia, the Old Country trailer reveal, right? And I think that's disappointing. I think it's the most disappointing when that stuff shows up in the Game Awards, because so often the Game Awards is not really about celebrating games. It's more about, get a Halo themed dinner with Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats or whatever the fuck, and oh, here's the new Netflix show or whatever. But like, I wish the Game Awards focused a lot more on awarding the best games of the year, having a better conversation about the best games of the year, because I feel like they often miss that mark. Maybe they'll get it right this time with the 10th anniversary. It remains to be seen. Maybe they can do some sort of retrospective on the best games that the Game Awards has shown over the last 10 years. That'd be kind of cool. But I'm still looking forward to it. I'll still be there to watch it. I'm assuming that's if I had to guess, the Game Awards probably closer to a 3-hour show than a 2-hour show. It's really hard to get all those awards, those acceptance speeches, and all that bullshit. Bullshit. I don't mean bullshit, but you know what I mean. In a 2-hour show, even if they did a pre-show. So I'm thinking that if I can make a prediction, the Game Awards is probably going to be 3 hours, not including a pre-show, if I had to guess. But we'll find out in December. I'm still looking forward to it because I'm a sucker and I run this podcast and I should probably watch it. I probably said last year that I wasn't going to bother watching it because I just don't think the Game Awards meets my standards for what an award show about video games should be. But I'm telling you now that I am all in. Let's do it. Let's do it one more time. Maybe I'll regret it. We'll find out. But, keep your eyes and ears on the rest of the Gamescom stuff that's happening. Cool stuff like the Mars Attacks game has, slipped through a couple of press conferences and other showcases that have been happening. IGN's got a lot of stuff going on. GameSpot has a lot of stuff going on. Because it's not just the opening night live with Jeff Keighley. It's a whole, multi-day event that they have going on with announcements and stuff like that. It's also open to the public if you're in Cologne, Germany. I think it's Cologne. It's in Germany. The whole country of Germany is just playing nothing but video games at the moment. Anyways, that's going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. Linktree.com/GnittWitt, Blue Sky, Instagram Threads, TikTok, YouTube, all of that good stuff. under one banner. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you have lots of gaming still left on your plate. Summer is almost done. The weather is changing, at least where I'm at, to some extent. Hopefully you got some fun games that you're looking forward to for the rest of the year, or at the very least, you got some games in your backlog that you can really start to chew through. I've been GnittWitt. This has been Glitch Report. Take it easy. We'll see you all next week.